Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us in the Governmental Affairs Full Committee. Sorry, turning this down. Testing. All right. We have 3 bills on the calendar today, and I'm going to ask Chairman Lumsden down there if he'll open us up in a quick word of prayer. What number are you? All right.
If you would, bow with me, please. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love and your goodness to us and for watching over us and caring for us. We thank you for the privilege that you've given each of us to be here today and for the responsibility that the citizens have placed in our hands. We ask for your guidance, for your direction, for your wisdom and your knowledge. May all that we do be in accordance with your will. For we pray it in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen.
Thank you. We're going to start with Senator Kilpatrick. Senate Bill 341, if you'll come on up, wherever you're more comfortable.
This time of the day, I think I'll sit.
All right, I'll turn the table mic on. Just tell us your bill number and the LC number you're working off of, and we'll follow along.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Senate Bill 341, and the LC is 520536S. All set? Okay. So this bill may look familiar to some of you because it was Senate Bill 23 last year, and it passed overwhelmingly through both chambers, but then was vetoed for unrelated reasons to what you're going to see today. There was an amendment that, anyway, was not okay, so that amendment's not on here. What I wanted to explain is that this bill is to streamline and simplify our code. It repeals a number of inactive boards and commissions that are still in our code, and it renames 3 committees. The boards and commissions are either obsolete, have not met, or no one even can remember why they're there. In addition, it eliminates pre-filing legislation that was added by the House last year, and also it modifies the structure of the Legislative Services Committee. So I'll briefly walk through the bill. Senate Section 1 and 2 and 14 are committee name changes. Sections 3 does away with the Georgia Education Authority for schools, which is not operational per the Department of Education. But it does keep the assets within the state. The Section 4 does away with pre-filing, as I mentioned, which is an unnecessary burden on our administrative staff in the House and the Senate. And Section 5 changes the structure of the Legislative Services Committee. It rotates the chairmanship between the House and the Senate. This gives parity to both chambers and strengthens the collaboration between the House and the Senate, and it's been agreed on by the leadership on both sides. Additionally, it raises the amount that can be authorized by the fiscal office for legal services from $5,000 to $12,000. As you know, legal bills have been steadily increasing, and this will help with the administrative burden of having to seek approval that delays payment. The leadership of both chambers has worked together on this for the last year and are in agreement. Section 6 does away with the Georgia Rail Passenger Authority Overview Committee, which is not operating. Section 7 removes the Kidney Disease Advisory Committee, which was abolished by statute in 2020. The Office of Women's Health reporting requirement was also abolished by Senate Bill 372 in 2020. Section 8, the Partnership for Public Facilities. No one knows what this is, and it's not operating. Section 9, the World War I Centennial Commission is over and finished with their work. Section 10, the State Personnel Oversight Commission. No one's been able to find this one. Section 11, the Small Business Assistance Advisory Council is not operating. Section 12, the Commission on Regional Planning is not operating. Section 13, the Commission on the Preservation of the State Capitol is not operating. So as I said, I appreciate the help of Legislative Counsel in identifying and cleaning up these parts of our law. We certainly want to streamline our code to match what's actually happening in the state. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, so thank you for, excuse me, thank you for cleaning these up and helping to make our government more efficient. And will the state save any money by doing this? Are any of these currently being funded that we're repealing?
I don't believe so.
Don't believe so. Okay. We have a couple of questions, and we'll start with Representative Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for the cleanup. Just for informational purposes, the ones that are no longer going to be in existence, are we saving any documents in case somebody ever wants to go back and see what it was they did?
Some of them we can't find, Representative.
Okay.
And so,
Well, that's good to know.
and the documents for the ones that had a mission and now they've completed it, those will be preserved.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Representative Olalier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for presenting this bill. You ran through quite a few entities that you're looking to do away with. Were there any responses from stakeholders that were outside the realm of nostalgia, substantive worries about getting rid of any of these commissions?
There was, thank you for the question, there was actually one, and we took them out of the bill. And that was the Palliative Care Council. They had not been meeting, but they fully intend to meet. In fact, I've now been appointed to that council, which is the bad news. But they have sent out a doodle poll requesting everybody's preferred date, so I do expect that one's going to start meeting. So that was the only ones that raised their hand and objected.
Thank you for your work on this.
All right. I don't see any more questions. Do we have a motion to shrink the size of our government? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Don't see any. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. All right, it moves.
Thank you very much.
And Senator, who's the House sponsor going to be? Do you have one?
Representative Scott Hilton.
Okay, great. Get that up. If you want to come up here and... Next, we'll move to Senator Rick Williams. Is he in the room?
Yes, sir.
All right, come on up and present your bill. Senate Bill 358. And will you make sure you read your LC number to make sure we're reading off the same bill?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have Senate Bill 358, LC 3051S. Is that what all of you have? Okay. This is a department bill. This is just cleaning up and consolidating some issues for the ethics department. Be glad to go through on the page 2. The commission will not accept or reject a complaint made nor issue a complaint on its own cognizance against a candidate in the 60 days immediately prior to an election in which a candidate is seeking election. That's to prevent election interference, pretty much. Somebody could file a complaint against someone within 60 days of their election, and for them to do so could cause irreparable damage. And the bill, I know, is thick, but as you go through and look, you're going to see a lot of sentences that are being stricken. So after the bill is complete, it will actually be thinner. But I do also have Joe Cusack from the Ethics Division here with me also, and David Amati is here in the audience also. As you see, page 4 is a lot is being stricken, and even on page 5. And it also goes back to a candidate for public office. The chairperson or treasurer of such candidate's campaign committee shall sign and file the required disclosures within the elections. And you know, a lot of this is just pretty much boilerplate for the ethics division and cleaning it up. And let's see, it gets into your local candidates. Is that page 6? Your local candidates are going to be filing locally as they are now, but that information will be forwarded to the State Ethics Commission. So all of those local candidates will be getting information directly from the Ethics Commission. Right now, they're getting misinformation, and they're not filing on time, or they're not filing complete disclosures, and it's causing them to get a fine or get a complaint against them. And so that's basically what the Ethics Division is doing, is streamlining, getting everything under one roof so they can oversee everything. Over on page 9, in non-election years and in each election year, you'll be filing 4 times. Now it's 6 times that you would have to file a report. So it's getting everything on the same schedule. Stop me if you think, Joe, I need to, if I miss something.
Senator, did I understand you to say that currently the requirement is 6 reports in a year?
That's right. In an election year. Currently, you do it January 31, April 30, July 31, October 15, June 30, September 30, October 25th, and December 31. So they're striking June, September, October, and December. On page 10, all persons or entities are required to file reports shall have a 15-day grace period in filing the required reports. So that is giving all the candidates and everyone a little more time so they can be exact and not have to make guesses. Page 11, you can see pretty much that whole page is stricken. Page 12, persons other than individuals making aggregate contributions and expenditures to or on behalf of 2 or more candidates in the amount of $5,000 or less in 1 calendar year, they shall file a report. Used to it was $25,000. So that's been lowered to $5,000. Line 290, any political action committee which makes contributions to or accepts contributions for or makes expenditures on behalf of candidates shall file a registration in the same manner as campaign committees, and they shall open and maintain a bank account so that there is an accounting of the money, where it is, what's being expended, what's being spent, what's being taken in. So you'll have a complete accounting to those PACs. Over on page 14, any person, line 350, any person elected to a public office who is required to file campaign contribution disclosure reports with excess contributions, they will be required to file supplemental campaign contribution disclosure reports January 31, April 30, July 31, and October 15. Again, that's 4 rather than 6. And I think page 16. It changes the date that each person who qualifies as a candidate for election to any such public office shall file with the commission no later than April the 1st, rather than the first day of January. It goes to April the 1st of each year in which such public officer holds office. And it also addresses each person who qualifies in a special election. Page 18, line 456. As of January the 1, 2026, such public officers and candidates shall file disclosure statements with the commission in the same manner provided for in paragraph 1 of this subsection. And on down on line 462, it's changing that date from January 31 to April the 1st. Line 464 is changing that date from January 31 to April the 1st. And page 19, line 479. Right now it says shall file with the commission not later than 7 days after qualifying, and it's actually changing that to April the 1st of such election year. So where someone might be pushed in getting qualified, getting their campaign set up, it's actually giving them a little more time to get their report filed. Page 20, line 521, financial statement just defines that which details the source and type of income with an indication of which of the following categories the amount or value of such an item of income is within, and you have line 524 through 532. And very important part on the bottom of page 21, line 548. The commission shall redact any identifiable home addresses from any records the commission discloses, posts, or releases to the public. That's for all the candidates' protection. And I think that's about it, isn't it? Section 6. All right, I'll have to go over to, I had to go back to my old one. That's where I had it highlighted so I could look at my notes, so pardon me a moment. Section 6, this, what have you got? It's not in the new one. No, it's not on the new one. This act shall become effective on January the 1st, 2025. So it gives time for all the record keeping and everything to get up to date. Be glad to answer any questions.
We've got a few,
I'm sure you do. Thank you.
and I will start with Representative Vanilowitz.
Thank you. Having been through the previous, years ago, multiple different filing processes for local officials, I very much appreciate the streamlined approach that has been taken, because I know if it was confusing for the local elected officials, it was even more confusing for members of the public who were just trying to get information on who was contributing to these campaigns. So thank you for taking these steps and for modernizing it and bringing e-filing back again for the local folks.
Thank you. I'll take questions like that all day, Chairman.
I was going to say that was an easy one, Representative.
Yeah, thank you. What did you?
All right, who's number 3? Is this Representative Roberts? All right, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess I don't know if I'm opposed to it, because this is the first I'm seeing of a pretty lengthy bill, and I kind of take pride in the fact that I pulled up this bill number before I walked in here, and I'm trying to figure out prompted, I mean, I heard my colleague's testimony about some of the good parts of it, but what prompted all of these changes? I'm just curious.
Representative Van Nulitz, would you like to answer her question?
And I think I can answer some of that. So this is all things we've heard throughout the years. Standardizing the filing schedule has come from complaints from the locals being confused on when to file. What we're seeing, some of them are filing June and December, some are filing January, June, and they're just confused. So we thought, all right, let's just have every single candidate, every single public official on the same schedule at the same time every year. Same thing with the personal financial disclosure statement, because sometimes it's July 1st or 15 days from qualifying. Which is it? I'm in a special. So if we're standardizing everybody that's qualifying or qualifying for election or re-election and putting that at April 1st. So every year, as opposed to July 1st and waiting, it would just be due by April 1st. So we're at the same point every year for everyone. And it's before the primary too, so the public's getting that information before they're going to vote. So it's sort of taking this approach of let's standardize it, make it easier for everyone to understand. We can expect it at the same time every single year. That way y'all know every year, all right, I have to file on these days. Is it an election year, non-election year? When am I filing? Am I filing in January? Am I filing in June? Am I filing in December? I don't really know. We're still getting those questions of, don't I have a December one, from members of the General Assembly, and you don't in non-election years.
As the minority caucus treasurer, I gave out misinformation that incumbents had until July and had to go back. So far that part is good.
Yes. So that's what we're trying to do, is just standardize it, make it easier so everyone knows what the schedule is every year and it's the same every year. And we're giving you a little more on the grace period part. The reason for that, going from 5 business days to 15 days, is we're getting a lot of complaints of, I'm waiting for my bank statement to come in and I want to reconcile my account, so I'm reporting the correct contributions, expenditures. Sometimes there's some lag time between vendors and payment and how the payment goes through. That's giving y'all a little more time to be able to disclose it properly, as opposed to having to go back and amend these reports. So at least there's a little more lag time to make sure they're correct, as opposed to having to go back and re-amend and amend these reports over and over again.
Okay.
Representative Oliver.
I'm looking at line 518 on page 20 about financial statements, and I apologize for being late. I'm playing catch up here. I could be wrong about this, but I understand the current financial statement to say anything, the asset value is more than $5,000. That's current law.
So this is actually the statewide partisan races that file. So governor, lieutenant governor, they have to file an enhanced personal financial disclosure statements when they qualify, and this is only pertaining to that personal financial disclosure statement. So they have to give a 5-year look back on their finances.
It's been a while since I've ran for statewide office. There's no difference today, though, in the financial affidavit between me and running for governor. Is that what is true today?
No, in election years, it would be different. If you were running for governor, you would have an enhanced personal financial disclosure statement, and then every other non-election year, you would file the one that you're filing this year. So this is only covering the enhanced one that is due when they qualify to run for.
So it doesn't involve me, but what is for a much more limited group of candidates, what's the reason to have these narrow income, and it's income or asset level? Because
sources of income. So any employment, any sitting on boards, things of that
But
nature.
if I own Delta stock worth greater than 5,000 or not more than 15,000, am I disclosing the stock, or am I disclosing the income from the stock, or am I disclosing both?
That would go on a separate part of the financial disclosure. That would be under the investments portion. This is just
Income.
strictly sources of income.
So unearned income is investments and not.
Correct.
Thank you.
Representative Bernal, are you number 12?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the bill. I agree. I mean, I'm thankful for some of the changes and everything that you made. But the problem comes that when we get ready to file, is finding exactly this information in a simplistic form. And is there some way that that's going to happen so that we can find it very easily, and especially like the changes for local legislation, local elections? Are they going to be able to find this information somewhere easily where they don't have to search 5 and 6 sites and call 10 people to ask them what they're supposed to do?
Yes, and that will be, that's why some of this it's going into effect in the end of 2025 for the local officials. We intend, if this does pass, to really put out a big education effort on getting all the locals this information of what would be required from them, what are the new requirements, just email blast. We go around the state and do education trainings, and we would ramp that up, especially with these changes, to make sure the message is out there of here's what's changed, here's what you need to do, here's what's required of you. So that's part of, with this legislative package right here, is what we'd be doing at the commission to get the word out and make sure everyone knew what was required of them.
Okay, so something like a 1-pager or a 2-pager, so we wouldn't have to flip through.
Right. Yeah, something like that, or we'd have PowerPoints. We actually have PowerPoints on our website now that outline sort of common pitfalls, things like that, training resources. Happy to get you those, or happy to get those into your locals' hands as well. But yeah, we have those resources.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bear with me if y'all don't mind for a series of 1 or 2 questions. I just want to make sure I kind of understand what all we're doing here. So Section 1 has to do with initiation of complaints and sort of the prohibition against accepting or rejecting complaints or issuing complaints on its own in the 60 days leading up to election.
Correct.
So we're kind of putting a bar on initiation of complaints or accepting them or any of that within the 60-day period leading up to election.
We currently have a rule that doesn't allow us to accept or reject within 30 days of an election. And what people are doing is the 31st day out, they're filing a complaint and then using it against their opponent. And we wanted to stop that. We want to stop being the political football that somebody would use. So we're using this 60 days to try to double that. And then it just sort of sits in a holding pattern until after the election, and then we determine whether or not to accept or reject it. But we're making no determination on it at that time.
So right now, there's a 30-day bar, and so you don't take any action if it's filed on day 30 or 29.
Correct.
Is it your, I guess I understand the policy reason for not doing that, but I also am just trying to struggle with the notion of what if it is a legitimate complaint, then in consideration of it is put off until after the election when it might not be as impactful or meaningful. Is it your conclusion in a lot of these cases that those complaints tend to be frivolous, the ones that are filed just before an election like that?
We see more frivolous than meritorious cases.
Meritorious ones, okay. Then Section 2, that's the campaign disclosure reports, and that seems to consume quite a bit of the bill, and I'm assuming that's the reports that we file and that other elected officials file as well.
Correct.
Okay. Then Section 3, Chair Lady Taylor had this question. I couldn't answer it because I can't seem to get on the, I don't have internet right now, but it talks about public officers. Is that the statewide officers for the most part on page 16? And I think that appears throughout that section. 21,550 relating to filing by public officers, filing by candidates for public office, and then the term public officer seems to appear in a number of those sections there.
So 407 through 417 would be each public officer, and this is A through D. So it's every member of the General Assembly, local officials, state commissions, boards, members as well.
So that is a broader term. It's not a narrower one.
Correct.
Okay.
And the statewide partisan offices fall under the one we were talking about with the ranges. And that only encompasses that 1 year report that they file in an election year when they qualify. And they have to do that enhanced personal financial disclosure statement.
Okay. So that's the one that's more limited in scope is, I guess, 514 to 539 on pages 20 and 21.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That was, I think, the question Chairman Oliver was asking about. And then you've got Section 4, concerns access to home addresses. And then Section 5, I think I don't know that y'all addressed that, but that seems to apply to people registered as lobbyists.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, all right. And so jumping back to Section 2, it looks like it seems the theme here is you're trying to eliminate sort of the exceptions and make the filing dates and the system more uniform across different years and different kinds of public office.
Exactly. It's making every single candidate have the same filing schedule, but also what we were seeing, it's when you leave office as well. We have a difference right now between a successful candidate and an unsuccessful candidate on when they file. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense in that when y'all leave office with excess contributions, you're filing right now on June 30th and December 31st for every year in which you have those excess contributions. If you lose the election, you only have to file once by December 31st every year. So you can lose track of that money fairly quickly if people don't file a couple reports. So that's why we're trying to make it so that it's 4 times a year, everyone's filing no matter what, even when you leave office with excess contributions, it's the same schedule as when you were in office.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and we'll come over here to the other side of the room, Representative Olalier.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Senator. If you could provide a little bit more clarity, I'm looking at lines 284 through 288, the exempted individuals from having to disclose aggregate spend, and I'm trying to understand the motivation behind reducing that aggregate contribution threshold and what the implications of that could be.
So right now, and this applies to PACs right now, what's happened is when PACs right now make contributions of $25,000 or more, so say they make $25,000 or less in contributions, they're not actually disclosing anything to us. What this is doing is once you make those aggregate contributions over $5,000, you're registering and disclosing, but also you're still filing until such time you close the account. Right now, PACs, when they exceed $25,000, they file just for that calendar year. So the last report is December 31st. They could then have excess contributions and that next year not make more than $25,000 in contributions, and they're not reporting that whole year. Then they could pick up the next year and be reporting again if they make $25,000 or more in contributions. What that's doing is it's throwing off balances. The balances don't make sense on our system when that happens, but it's also just a full year of, I guess, increased transparency on what happened with the money. It's just gone.
Yep.
It's gone. So once you make those contributions, you're filing until such time you close the account. So that's what we're trying to do to make sure we're keeping track of all the money.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, back to Representative Vanilowitz.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. Well, I think we've covered all the questions so far. Does the committee have a
I just hate getting this big of a bill and not having a chance to really absorb it. I'm sorry. It's not that I'm necessarily opposed to it, but I just can't digest it.
Oh, yeah, and I'm Joe Cusack. I'm the Deputy Director at the Ethics Commission.
Does anybody wish to make a motion?
I did, motion to table.
I want to see if anybody has a motion to pass first.
Is that how Robert's rules?
All right.
Is that how Robert's rules?
All right, we have a. Well,
I had a
we're.
motion, she seconded it, but.
All right, well, I guess we can take a motion to table, and we can vote on that. We'll vote on that
She
first.
seconded it.
So we have a motion to table in a second. Any discussion? Go ahead, Representative Oliver.
I would just, I'd be happy to vote on it after I've read it, and I apologize, I haven't read it for.
It's not online.
It's not online. And
Look, I
this,
tried.
substitute came to us today, then I know we're meeting again. I'm not opposed to the bill. I just would rather understand what it says.
Didn't know if you had seen the other bill that came. It was just like it. We only took out the section 6 that had to do with lobbyist expenditures, but it's just like the other bill.
I don't remember.
I didn't know if you saw it. Okay.
Representative Leverett, did you have a comment or question?
Just to the comment that it's not online, usually bills that are offered as committee substitutes are not placed online until they're approved by the committee. So there's nothing irregular about that. Now, to the concern that it is a big bill. It's a lot of paper. It's a lot of words, and that you haven't had a chance to read it. I respect that. It seems to me this is largely a department bill, what we would call a department bill, and in that
Yes,
case,
sir, that was my opening comment. It was a department bill to standardize just filing that we're all doing now. And is most of the bill is current law. And it's just standardizing between local qualifying candidates and statewide.
It is, but admittedly though, it is changing some things. I mean, it's changing a lot of things. So I understand the concern. The fact that it's a department bill, from my perspective, causes a little less concern. But that every person's got to make their own call on that regard, I think. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Representative Maynor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess I wanted to just reiterate or clarify that this is a bill that the State Ethics Commission thinks will be beneficial to the logistics of your office.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Representative Oliver, did you have another comment?
I agree with Chairman Leverett that there's nothing at all unusual about bringing a substitute that nobody's seen. It happens daily in this time of the year. I'm just really confused by the way you have broken down these income and or asset levels for the statewide candidates. I can't figure out why in the world there's a reason for that, and it's nothing apparent to me. It's just one example, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to
Okay.
slow this down a little bit.
If it actually mirrors the federal financial disclosure statements. So it takes from what our House of Representatives and senators file with the clerk of the Senate or clerk of the House. This actually mirrors their language that they use. So that's why it's, as opposed to approximate, it's income ranges ranges, using ranges instead of actual approximations. So when you're swearing and affirming on these documents, people would much rather use ranges than, I guess, approximations.
But you're not saying that the governor person running for governor already has to comply with this under any federal law. You're not saying that.
They actually have to file something that's, it's more of an approximation at this point. This would give them ranges.
Under federal law, running for the state governor, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying this is already, the governor would already still have to file this when qualifying, but they're using an approximation as opposed to ranges.
Under current Georgia law?
Yes.
Okay.
But it mirrors what they do at the federal level on the financial disclosure there.
All right. Let's see. Representative Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again. As a retired educator, a lot of times if you're the creator of something, it seems really simple. But then I just know when you all went from that one computer system to another, and I still don't really understand that one. So when you now come and you have all these other changes, I mean, I just think that we have to have time to soak it in, because if we're sitting here kind of understanding it, I could just imagine somebody that's not here and they're local and someone is telling them all this. This can be really overwhelming. So that's why I think, if we can make it a hearing only. Thank you.
All right. Representative Roberts.
I just want to be clear. I don't want to make an enemy of the Ethics and Campaign Finance Department. I am an attorney and I'm trying to absorb what you're saying and read at the same time. And there's lots crossed out and there's lots added. And so for me, it's not, these may all be amazing changes. I'm just struggling to digest it in this short window of time. And I understand that they're not always online, but this one's extra large. And I'm doing the best I can. So that's the only reason for my motion to table.
And Legislative Counsel here is also the one that drew it, if y'all have any questions.
But
Stuart,
I gotta understand it.
yeah, not throwing him under the bus, but he's worked very hard as
I'm sure.
Ethics Commission and everyone. Thank you.
Yep. So, I concur that it is a big bill, and it's making some changes to a very important department, and we want to make sure the changes are good. And Senator Williams, I believe you're the right sponsor for the bill for that reason. So we've got a motion to table. We've had discussion, and we will take a vote. And then I believe we have had a motion to do pass as well. So we'll take a vote and on the table, motion to table. All in favor of tabling, say aye. All opposed, say no. All right, we'll do a hand vote. All in opposed, hold up your hand. I'm sorry, yes. All in favor of tabling. All in favor of being against passing the bill today, raise your hand. All right. All opposed at the table, motion to table, raise your hand. All right. So the motion to table fails. And now we'll recognize motion do pass. Do we have a second? We have a second. All in favor of the passage of this Senate bill, say aye. All opposed, say no. Okay. So it moves.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Do you have a House sponsor, Senator Williams?
I think Chairman Rob Leverett was going
to teach me to keep my mouth shut, huh?
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
All right. The final bill today is by Senator Kim Jackson, Senate Bill 324. And if you have a guest with you, if you'll bring them up and introduce them when you get here.
Thank you, Mr.
All right. You go ahead. Tell us about Senate Bill 341.
So I'm working
Oh, I'm
off-
sorry, 324.
Yes, this is SB 324. I'm working off of a substitute LC 481297S. Oh, maybe I have a different one than y'all do.
Let's let Chairman Gaines
Real
comment to
quick,
that.
just to the only difference between 9799 is that sections 1 and 2 are effective July 1 of this year, because of your program will be still effective July of 26. That's the only difference between 97 and 99.
Thank you.
So is 99 your sub? Okay. Do you have 99 now?
I do.
All right. Very good. So we're looking at LC 481299S.
That's right. Thank you. And with me today, I have Madam Karina Dillard, who is really the true subject matter expert on all things related to domestic violence and stalking. I would like to perhaps speak. I want to speak to the underlying part of the bill that I am most familiar with, which begins on page 4. It's Article 8. This was kind of where my bill originated, and then I'll pass the mic over to Ms. Dillard to speak about the sections before that. But if you look on page 4 under Article 8, what this section seeks to do is to create an address confidentiality program for people who are victims or survivors of domestic violence, stalking, any type of family violence, and anyone who feels that their life is under threat by someone else. The way this would work is that you would have to be moving So you can't, this is not retroactive. If you currently live there and you're not planning to move, your information is already public, and we're not going to be taking time to scrub information away. That's not what we're doing here. But should you say, let's say you're, for example, you're a victim of domestic violence and you move to get away from that. When you move, there will be a period where you can reach out to the Secretary of State's office and ask to have your address made confidential so that it wouldn't show up on public records. We already have a Vote Safe program, but it would be wider than that. It would range wider. But public records would be protected and your address would be shielded so that your victimizer would not be able to find you. This program will be housed in the Secretary of State's office. I think it's important to note that there are 42 states in the union that already have this program. So we're not creating something that is new, really. It's just new for Georgia. And it is something that we know will be life-saving. There's a fiscal note attached to this bill. I don't know if it made its way over from the Senate to go with you, but there is a fiscal note attached to this bill, and because of that, our implementation date for the bill, well, for this portion of the bill is July 1st of 2026 to give the department time to both set up the program and also for us to appropriate the funds for that program. So that's what Article 8 does, Section 3 of this bill. And I will turn it over to Ms. Dillard to just explain the beginning portions of the bill.
Thank you so much, Senator Jackson. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Karima Dillard, and I'm the Director of Policy for the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We are a member-based organization, and our members consist of domestic violence programs from all across the state. We are very, very excited about this bill. As Senator Jackson said, it will save lives. We are also really excited about the changes that Representative Gaines has made, and the domestic violence community is in full support and believe that these changes will also save lives. Should I go through those portions now? Okay. So, is this the new one? Okay. So the first change would be the prohibition of mutual temporary protective orders. This is already law. It's already in the family violence statute. It's merely cleanup language, making the language consistent. It amends the section where the court is instructed on how to grant TPOs. And it merely says that if you are the respondent in court in a TPO case, you can't then say, well, I was also abused, and then you get a TPO and they get a TPO and everybody gets a TPO. It just says you actually have to go through the process of filing the petition, and it needs to be 3 days before the actual court date. So it's a really small fix. And the second thing that the changes do is provide a fix to the dating violence TPO legislation. This was landmark legislation that was passed in 2021. And what this bill does is it gives the courts an enforcement mechanism. So right now, if someone were to violate a dating violence TPO and they went to court and said, you know, my abuser violated the TPO, there is nothing in statute that allows them to do anything about it. So it essentially is just a piece of paper. And we want to make sure that survivors are protected all the way around. I'm happy to answer questions.
I've got a question. Could you describe one of you describe the typical victim that this would be helping?
So I can speak to particularly I can speak to any of these actually. So are you talking about the dating violence portion of this bill or the address confidentiality portion?
Well, I was thinking about the address
Sure. Okay,
privacy.
I can give you a great example of that. So let's say that a woman is involved in a domestic violence situation. She goes through the process where her partner is, beating her or doing some type of harm. She goes through the process of getting a TPO, of doing all the things right, but the abuser knows where she lives. And so he might move from abusing her physically to stalking activity as opposed to physical violence. And of course, since he knows where she lives, that's even easier. So what this does is it says to the person, the woman who was being beaten and now it's transitioned to stalking, you can move. You know, if you move, you have the resources to be able to move. And I want to remind this body that we've done two important things to help these types of folks move. One is that we passed a law to make sure that if you were a victim of family violence, that you can get out of your lease without penalties. This body did that several years ago. And then my very first bill that you all helped me pass allowed that for stalking victims as well. So this is kind of the follow-up. Now that we've given you an opportunity to move, now we want to make sure that your address is protected so it doesn't show up on public sites. And so it helps that exact kind of scenario. It really does protect people. It helps people really get away from stalkers.
Okay.
Add really quickly, this would also protect victims of trafficking, victims of dating violence, sexual violence, in addition to stalking and domestic violence, yes.
Thank you. I believe Representative Gaines has a comment.
I just want to thank you for letting us also add sections 1 and 2, and thank you for all your work on this. I also want to recognize Joan Pretty, who's in the audience, and Joan, wave your hand if you will. She's at Project Safe in Athens and just does a tremendous job, and appreciate her bringing both sections 1 and 2, as well as you all bringing that important issue to the forefront. So thank you, and appreciate you, Senator Jackson. Also, Representative Amari Crawford's been working on this, and the same language passed out of committee earlier this session on section 2. So thank you.
All right. Let's go to Chairman Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Senator, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Thank you for your vote yesterday in Ag. I really appreciated that.
I hope you can return the favor, sir.
I'm planning to. As to your section 3, so if I understand it, there would be a way you could apply to not have your home address posted on public sites, and that would be managed with the Secretary of State. So would that then apply? And it looks like you give a designated address, which I'm assuming, would that be like a post office box or something that doesn't disclose a residence, or is it a different?
So the way this program works is the Secretary of State's office will set up a designated address, and it'll be the same address for all victims or all survivors.
Okay.
And then the Secretary of State's office, through this program, would be responsible for forwarding all first-class mail, registered mail, and the like to the person. So the Secretary of State's office will know your actual address. Some of the questions that came up when we did this in the Senate, the Secretary of State's office will know your address, and therefore we can confirm that you are registered to vote in the place in which you live. We'll know your precinct because it's all controlled by the Secretary of the State. But it'll be, most secretaries of states who do this type of program, they have a separate off-site place that the mail goes to. That's the designated address, and then they work through the process of forwarding that mail to people.
Okay, so effectively the Secretary of State becomes your mailbox, and then they forward the mail to you.
That's correct.
Okay, and then it looks like you also can, if you've got to give an address, like maybe to a local official, to a tax assessor board for your tax digest or something, you can give them your I think you get a card, you give them a card, and they would put the designated address on that, so it wouldn't show, someone couldn't get your address through that route as well.
That's correct.
Okay. And as to, thank you, that's an extremely creative and useful program, so I thank you for bringing that. As to section 1, just one question, and this might be better directed to Vice Chairman Gaines, but the prohibition on a mutual protective order, I know most of the time, fortunately I have not been involved as an attorney in one of those for a long, long time, but a lot of times the judge will issue a mutual order even when it has not been requested. And I suppose in a sense the judge, maybe he's doing that to provide the respondent some shred of dignity or, as an accommodation. I think sometimes they're also doing it because they believe it's probably best for everybody to stay away from everybody. I just, what's that? No, I was curious for your comment. Or based on testimonies heard. And a lot of times folks don't file, the respondent doesn't file a petition. If they don't go to a lawyer, usually they're not going to by the hearing. And so I just wondered what the policy concern or issue was for that provision.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question. Did you want to? Okay. So that's a really great question. It's already codified in the family violence statute that the protective order process should be conditional. And I think what I've heard from our member programs, particularly our legal community, is that because the language is not consistent in both the family violence statute and the protective order statute, where they actually give instruction on how to grant these orders, people are falling through the cracks. These protective orders are being granted at the same time, and it's actually harmful for victims when they are in fact the victim and not the perpetrator. And we're just trying to clean up the language to make sure that we're not victimizing victims. Joan, did you want to add? Please. Please.
Yeah, just introduce yourself and
Can you hear me
tell
up
us who
here?
you're with. Yep.
My name is Joan Pretty. I am the editor and principal author of the Georgia Domestic Violence Bench Book, and I'm also the executive director of the Project Safe Domestic Violence Center. So Ms. Dillard is correct. It is already codified in our dating violence statute and in our family violence statute, and I mean, long codified. I went back looking legislatively about 20 years, and we have this prohibition. And it doesn't keep a respondent from filing a counter petition. What it does is put protective guardrails on that ensure both the safety and the due process rights of the petitioner, so that someone who has followed the process, and we already have it laid out in dating violence and family violence, it just wasn't inserted in stalking, and that really was just an oversight in the advocacy that it wasn't put in. It's the same language, so this would get all 3 civil protective orders to have that same language. And so, what are the dangers? Well, someone shows up to a hearing for their petition, which they have filed, in this case for stalking, and the respondent shows up and just brings this up out of the blue, where the person hasn't had time to gather additional facts to prepare a response to this. So this language says you follow the same rules that are already in place for family violence and dating violence, which is you have to file a verified sworn counter petition, just like the petitioner did, with sworn facts, and you have to do it no later than 3 days from the hearing. So it is just the same procedural process. And when we allow a respondent who is indeed perpetrating stalking to come in and sort of flout these rules and just give them a mutual order, it's no big deal. Well, now we've allowed that person to weaponize the legal system against the petitioner, to put that petitioner in a place where they could be in jeopardy of violating this protective order in living their life. And so there is really a fundamental unfairness and also a potential danger by not having this.
Thank you, Chairman Libbert. You want to respond to that?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for clarifying. So there is already a similar prohibition in the other statutes.
Yes, that's not similar, identical.
Okay.
Identical. This was total oversight that it didn't get in stalking back probably 20 years ago when we did it for family violence.
So I appreciate the concern you've got. I don't exactly see what the true harm is to the petitioner if there is a mutual order entered. To me, I think judges are pretty careful about not imposing those in such a way as to impose a hardship on the petitioner, but just to ensure that the petitioner doesn't try to solicit contact. Because I just don't think every situation is always as clear. I think we have to consider that there may be petitions that aren't valid, or that where the petitioner has some degree, if not of fault, at least may be participating in conduct that incites the activity. And I guess I'm just trying to understand why we would tie the judge's hands in that way. I understand the due process argument, but I don't really understand how the petitioner is truly harmed as long as the judge crafts the mutual order in such a way that doesn't alter the conduct of their life materially.
The petitioner is only harmed by not having the advance notice and the opportunity to provide the same preparation that the respondent got to provide in coming to this hearing. This doesn't tie the judge's hands in any way in determining the merits of the substance of the petitioner's claim. If it lacks merit, the judge can dismiss it. So there's nothing about that. There's nothing that prevents a judge from saying, go down to the clerk's office, get the paperwork, file it, and in 3 days, we will have this hearing. So a judge can extend the ex parte until the respondent has had time here. But it is allowing, rather than tilting the playing field now in favor of the respondent who got to do something without following the procedural rules, instead of that, we're just maintaining the same playing field for these folks. But it doesn't in any way limit a judge from saying that the original petition lacked merit or from doing a mutual temporary protective order. It just puts these guardrails on the process that we've already put in place for family violence and dating violence.
I thought it specifically did limit the ability to put the mutual order if the counter petition hadn't been filed.
The limit is following the process, right? Following the process that the petition. So as long as you follow the process, or the judge can say, we're going to delay this hearing for 3 days to allow you to follow this process, and then I will rule on that mutual protective order.
And I understand you've clarified that a good bit for me, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, back to the Section 3, Article 8. This, in essence, creates a new division or department under the Secretary of State, which will be subject to appropriations and that sort of thing. Is there an estimate from their office as to the cost of this program?
Yes, we do have a fiscal note that was done on the original bill. The startup cost for this program is about $400,000 to just stand it up. They have to create training, they have to create a process, the cards, those things. And then the ongoing cost is about $250,000. Of course, we can't say definitively because we don't know how many people will sign up, but we do have averages from across the state, and it's usually about 1,000 people. And I think it's important to know also that you can't stay on this list forever. That there is a process where you can renew, but this isn't a permanent situation. So they'll have people who are rolling off and rolling on, so our rolls won't be extraordinarily large as a result of that process.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My questions was on the same line of we didn't see the fiscal note, and it doesn't go into effect until next year anyway, but this is going to get time to get it in the budget. And thank you for getting that beforehand. I'm just sorry I didn't see it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Senator, understand this will be administered through the Secretary of State's office. What have they weighed in? What is their
Yes, the
position?
Secretary of State's office is fine with the program. That's kind of the language they said, the fine, as long as we find the funds. They're very concerned about making sure of that. But our start date, again, is not until July of 26 to set us up to be able to do that. But the Secretary of State's office has been very supportive. They actually helped us do the fiscal note by talking about how many employees they think that they would need. It's actually been a really mutual process that we've been engaged in to get to this point.
All right. We'll take a couple more questions and then move to see what the committee would like to do. Representative Anulowicz.
At the appropriate time, I'd actually like to offer an amendment as well.
All right. We'll circle back to you.
Thank you.
Representative Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How does this protect them in terms of their jobs, where they work at?
Sure. So a person, when they're hired, is, again, this is if they sign up for the address confidentiality program, they can bring that designated address to their employee and have that listed on anything that the employee, as far as the employee should know, that is the person's address. And so anything that the company publishes that has addresses, which hopefully they wouldn't be doing anyway, it would have that designated address. So they're even safe in that situation. Let's say the abuser tries to get to you through your work's list of addresses. Now, it doesn't protect, if they know where you work, they know where you work. But it does make sure that your workplace doesn't know where you work.
And then what about if they have children?
So if you have children, and
I mean,
you have
on the school records, how would that be listed?
Right. So you would address so here's the thing. It goes with the place where the adult who has this address confidentiality. So presumably if a parent goes and signs their child up and they have that designated address, then that's the address that they would give to the school system. Now the school system, because of the training process that will be set up over the course of these 2 years, they will know that that's a designated address, because it's probably not going to be in their district, right? And that will direct them to the Secretary of State's office, who could then confirm or deny that that person does live in the school zone that they've been placed in. They won't be able to tell them the exact address, but they could confirm whether or not they're in the right place, just like they could do with voting. They won't be able to tell, well, they won't be able to tell themselves. No. They wouldn't be able to tell, say, a poll worker, if a poll worker were questioning the person's precinct location. They would not be able to tell the poll worker the exact address of where the person lived, but they could verify that they were in the right location. So that's how it would work for a child as well in school.
All right, with the committee, anybody like to make a motion? We've got a motion and a second, and I will circle back to the Anulowitz request.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yes, so I realize this is a very similar subject matter to a bill that I have gotten unanimously out of House Judiciary twice this year. It is right now House Bill 1184, and what I'd like to add as the amendment is LC 481241S. But what this bill does is it adds evidentiary privilege for victim-centered programs and victim offender dialogues. And the reason I thought this might be an appropriate amendment for this legislation is because House Bill 1184 is supported by so many of the same organizations, including, I have actually letters of support with me from the Georgia Commission on Family Violence, the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence, Street Grace. Chairman Leverett is actually a co-sponsor of this legislation, and I can answer any other questions about it, but it did pass Judiciary unanimously twice. It just didn't quite make it all the way on crossover day, but I figured what better time than Lent for a total Hail Mary to get this little bill moving again.
All right, so we have the Anulowitz amendment to add LC. Can you read that again?
Yes, it's LC 481241S, and there's actually one change to that one that, well, LC 1421S is everything. Yes, LC 1241S.
And you said it passed out of Judiciary twice.
Twice unanimously, last year and this year.
Okay, 2 years in a row. Gotcha. All right. Representative Gullett has a question.
Yeah, before I vote on something I haven't read, I would like that. Is there a copy somewhere that you can pass out? Probably, I imagine members want to read it. I don't know, but you're good? Okay. I'm not, so.
Yeah. No, I was agreeing that it'd be good to be able to see it.
Yeah, and this is there. I do. Well, kind of. Yeah, it's it's House Bill 1184, and the LC is 481241S.
Does everybody on the committee have a device they can look that up if you wish? We've confirmed that it's the version online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the current version online is the correct one. Yeah, the current version online. Yeah, it's supported by the Board of Pardons and Paroles, by the Prosecuting Attorneys Council is totally okay with it. And again, it is something that is very beneficial for these survivors, particularly of human trafficking, of family violence, of domestic violence.
Representative Gullett.
Does the author of the bill find this to be a friendly amendment, neutral amendment? No idea because you hadn't read it amendment.
The author of this bill is quite trusting of her colleague, and therefore is if the ultimate carrier of the bill, so Representative Houston Gaines is going to be the one who carries the bill, I'm actually want to defer to him because he would be the one who would have to do this work. So I think that's really where the question is with Representative Gaines, but I'm okay with it.
Okay.
And we'll see if Representative Gaines wants to comment.
Bless you.
Representative Anulowicz, bless you. Representative Anulowicz, did you explain to us just the overall intent of your bill?
Oh, absolutely. So what this does is provides for evidentiary privilege and victim-centered justice programs. These are victim-centered programs. They are optional. They are victim-led. They are trauma-informed. They are in addition to or as an alternative to the traditional legal system, and they center the victims, the survivors of these crimes like domestic violence, family violence, human trafficking, by looking to them to dictate what accountability looks like. Most importantly, and the reason why I'm so evangelical about this bill and why I've carried it twice through House Judiciary, is that these programs are shown to benefit the victims, they're shown to benefit the survivors who have higher rates of satisfaction with these programs than often with the traditional system. And more importantly, the survivors are likely to find the healing and the closure that we all know is so important to them when they have been through these horrible experience. We know for the process to happen, for this healing and this closure, we have to have an open and honest dialogue. And that is why 1184 is so critical for offering these programs in Georgia. It's a simple bill. It adds evidentiary privilege to the evidence code for communications within these victim-centered programs. This mirrors privileges that are already found in context, including mediation, communications with a member of the clergy, apologies made by medical providers, and communications between a victim of family violence and sexual assault and the agencies providing services to that victim. But for the programs to work, there has to be this open dialogue. There has to be that acknowledgement of wrongdoing, and that requires the evidentiary privilege provided by this bill. Without this, the defendants simply won't, and the perpetrators will not take the accountability for the harm that they have caused, and the victims and survivors in Georgia will not get the healing that they seek.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see, Representative Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple concerns on this bill. First is that Rob Leverett was one of the co-signers. Secondly, seriously, one is Title 16 and one's Title 24. Can you just get into the germaneness concern that's going to come up about that?
This started off as one title, and then another title was added to it. This is a different title, but it is the same subject matter.
So you feel comfortable?
I do feel comfortable with it. Okay. Yes, I consulted with Legislative Counsel on that question also.
Okay, thank you.
Ledge Counsel, do you mind weighing in on the germaneness?
Well, germaneness is a matter of parliamentary procedure, which our office doesn't take a position on. Legally, the subject matters would appear to line up, so there should not be an issue with the Constitution's single subject matter requirement.
Thank you. Let's see, Representative Gaines, as the House sponsor, would you like to weigh in?
I'm still digesting it a little bit. We were just over there. I was checking with my counsel, Rob Leverett. So, he's giving me some insight. One thing's if we do decide to go down that path, the other thing that's got to get right is the effective date, because you're going to add all these new sections. So, but I think I just want to make sure we get it right, and if we go down that path, I do think that probably the cleanest thing. I guess I defer to the senator, but it's probably as is, but if everybody's in agreement, I just want to make sure we also get the effective dates right, because this Section 3 in the original bill is 2026. Sections 1 and 2 that we added is July of this year. So that's something else to consider.
And I will defer to Legislative Council on the effective date because we actually don't have an effective date in this legislation.
Which
It
would
would just
normally
be-
imply
right,
a July 1st
correct,
of this year.
Correct.
All right. Well, so we've got the Nullowitz amendment. And a motion to pass. Well, I believe Ledge Council can weigh in, but I believe that the implied effective date would be July 1st.
Yeah, that's it. It would be
We'll
the
let Ledge
standard.
Council confirm that.
If it could just be assumed that I have the authority to make all conforming changes necessary to update the title, effective dates, section numbers, we should be good.
There's no cost associated.
Oh, no, there's no cost. There's no fiscal note required. There's no cost whatsoever associated. Mhm.
I will say this, this came out of judicial.
Mhm.
This is not a judicial committee. I'm not an attorney. I know the judicial committee deals with a lot of complex issues that get in the weeds, legal weeds. We're getting close to the end of this session, but we do have a little bit more time. So I'll just, word of caution, we may want to vet this outside of committee a little bit more. But we do have the motion on the table and a second. And Representative Gaines wants to speak up again.
I do have one question because I just want to make sure that this is able to come back to the Senate for an agree, because I do think this is a really important bill. I do know that sections 1 and 2 have been, we've talked to Senate leadership and have confirmation this would be agreeable and they would pull this up for an agree. Have you had Representative Nullowitz a chance to talk to the Senate about to make sure that if we add this, that it would be able to come back up for an agree? Because obviously they have to agree to this.
I have not had that conversation. I mean, I'll be candid. This is a Hail Mary moment for me with this little bill. But I based on conversations that other folks and the advocates who have been working with this have had, I think that they would be amenable, but I cannot attest to, I can't make that promise.
Sure.
Chairman Leverett.
That's my only concern. I mean, I co-signed on that bill, and I think it creates a useful privilege, and I think it has meaningful or needed exceptions where there's threats of violence and that kind of thing. But I've gotten comfortable with Section 1, and I don't want the bill to drag down if there's some other issue we're not aware of. So that's the only concern I have. I'm trying to think of a possible resolution where we could still address that, and if it's not going to do that, if we're not going to have a problem with the agree, then we could add it. But I also know we're getting in the short rows here, so I hate to jeopardize the underlying bill, even though I would like to see that other bill move as well. I'm just sort of sharing that concern, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for weighing in, Vice Chair Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to table.
Okay.
The whole bill or the?
Bill or the amendment?
To table the entire bill.
If I would, okay.
Representative Nullowitz.
I'll withdraw my motion
Mhm.
to amend.
So you withdraw your motion to amend? Due to the risk it poses to stalling the entire bill. Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay.
It hasn't been seconded.
Objection, not responsive. That's not what you asked.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to do pass the original bill with the sub, the LC number that was presented today. And so all in favor of that, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right. So it moves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.